You might have heard about the space between thoughts or the gap between the thoughts. This comes quite often in the path of enlightenment. The gap is a silent space between the thoughts. It is the space where the mind stands still. In this gap, one can experience awareness. I also stumbled on this phrase, discover inner space by creating gaps in the stream of thinking. Without those gaps, your thinking becomes repetitive, uninspired, devoid of any creative spark, which is how it still is for most of the people on the planet. I seriously took the concept of this. I was told that meditation is the path that can lead to this profound experience. I was told that it helps the mind, makes it sharp, and in that process, one can become potentially extraordinarily intelligent. I meditated, put up more hours on meditation. The more I meditated, the more I felt that my mind is sharp in problem solving skills. It did help in the beginning. However, I always had this doubt. Am I creating a state of gap between the thoughts? In the supposed gap between the thoughts, I constantly hear the humming sound inside myself. There is always an experience of the fog. You can call this as the feeling of I. This state of quietness, creating a gap between thoughts with the feeling of I, after some practice, got into a state where I can reproduce this at wish and will. Then the question comes, is the state of the gap between thoughts the product of willpower? Is this what the literature everywhere profoundly mentions? The typical process to find the answer to this question is to read books, search the internet, read more spiritual books. But it felt that the answer, whatever I get, is second-hand, not fully discovered by myself and purely by myself. How do I find answer to this question? Are all questions the same? For a question to exist, what is the principle that is needed? Is it not I? Let's say it is I. Then why not question who am I? What is the answer? Let us leave this question for another day. But what is the feeling of I? Is the feeling of I the thought to begin with? So it requires us to define what a thought is. The source of thought is thinking. Thinking is a response to memory. And memory is surely from the past. So thought can be defined as anything I knew from the past. As one knows oneself in the current moment and the knowledge of oneself is from the past, perhaps at the time of the birth, the feeling of I is also a thought to begin with. During the space created between the thoughts, of course by will, is the feeling of I still existing? Let's say it exists, then is space between thoughts a possibility? The plain answer from my side, during the wake-up state, the space between thoughts is not a possibility. The feeling of I always exists. Any attempt to get away from the feeling of I is just strengthening the feeling of I. That is why truth is pathless land. All one can do is to show a pointer, but one has to find by themselves and purely by themselves. The greatest obstacle in finding the truth are the concepts. The concept of I, the concept of religion, the concept of mathematics, etc. Note that concepts have their own value. Its value is in the field of thought. But truth is beyond the concepts, beyond the thought.